Drake just dropped 43 songs across 3 albums in a single night, and if you're wondering why that number matters, it's because 2 days later, nobody was talking about any of them. Iceman, Habibti, and Maid of Honor landed on streaming platforms simultaneously in what was supposed to be the most ambitious musical event of his career, and the internet treated it the way you'd treat a notification from an app you forgot to delete. The critics buried it almost immediately. The memes cycled through within 48 hours. And by the end of the first week, the cultural conversation had moved on entirely, as if 43 songs and 3 full-length albums from one of the most commercially successful rappers in history simply did not warrant sustained attention. And that's when people started realizing that Kendrick Lamar may have done something far worse than just beat Drake in a rap battle. He may have told the complete truth about him. The triple album didn't just fail critically, it exposed a pattern of behavior that has been escalating for 2 straight years. And the clearest place to see that pattern is not in the music itself, but in a tattoo parlor in the summer of 2025. Drake had a tattoo of LeBron James on his arm, and it wasn't a subtle one. LeBron's St. Vincent St. Mary's high school jersey, number 23, inked on the outside of his left arm, worn proudly for years as a public symbol of one of the most visible friendships in entertainment. Drake and LeBron were close in the way that famous people are close when both parties want the world to know about it. The kind of relationship that gets documented at courtside seats and joint vacations, and carefully curated Instagram posts designed to project the image of an untouchable inner circle. And then, in June 2024, LeBron James went to a concert, and that was apparently enough to destroy the entire thing. He attended Kendrick Lamar's pop-out show in Los Angeles, a victory lap celebration after Kendrick's definitive win in the rap beef, and while LeBron didn't make a public statement or explicitly pick a side, his presence in that room was enough for Drake to treat it like a blood oath had been shattered. What followed was a slow-motion erasure that played out across multiple platforms over the course of a year. Drake unfollowed LeBron on social media and then also unfollowed DeMar DeRozan for good measure. On his January 2025 track Fighting Irish, he took shots at LeBron alongside J. Cole and Joe Budden, running through the names of everyone he felt had abandoned him with the energy of a man reading a list of defendants in open court. He started changing lyrics during live performances, reworking the song Non-Stop at the Wireless Festival in London to say, "How I go from 6 to 23, not LeBron," transforming a song his fans already knew into a public grievance filing. And then, at that same festival, he showed up with new ink on his arm, and the LeBron tattoo was gone, covered entirely, replaced with the jersey number of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the Oklahoma City Thunder MVP, and more importantly, Canadian. Think about that for a second, because the layers of pettiness here are genuinely staggering. Imagine being so furious about a concert appearance that you permanently erase someone from your skin, not over a breakup, not over a betrayal, not over a single word spoken against you, but because a man you called your brother went to a show and sat in the audience. LeBron went to a concert, and Drake's response was to sit in a tattoo chair and pay someone to physically remove years of friendship from his body and replace it with a portrait of a younger athlete whose primary qualification was his passport. Charlemagne the God roasted him for it on The Breakfast Club, pointing out that covering up the tattoo doesn't take away LeBron's greatness on the court, and that Drake didn't even remove the ink entirely. He just swapped one grown man's portrait for another, which somehow made the whole thing worse. One fan online captured the mood perfectly when they wrote, "We kinda always knew he was a loser and excused it because his music was good, but it's like Kendrick did something to really expose it. This is childlike behavior." But LeBron wasn't even the only one, because the list of people Drake burned through after the beef reads like a roll call of everyone who ever stood near him when the cameras were on. A$AP Rocky was someone Drake brought on the Club Paradise tour back in 2012, when Rocky was still an emerging artist trying to find his footing, and they collaborated on Problems together in a moment that felt like genuine creative partnership. Then, Rocky started dating Rihanna, Drake's very public former love interest, and things between them cooled in the way that things cool when ego and romantic history occupy the same room. When the Kendrick beef erupted, Rocky openly aligned against Drake by appearing on Future and Metro Boomin's Show of Hands, a track that included shots aimed squarely in Drake's direction, and then on his 2026 album, Don't Be Dumb, Rocky included multiple references that were widely interpreted as direct disses. So what does Drake do on his supposed comeback album, the project that was going to prove to the world that he had evolved and moved on and grown beyond the pettiness? On Burning Bridges, Drake takes what listeners widely interpreted as shots at Rocky and Rihanna, including a pointed line questioning why Rocky's partner was not promoting his music without ever naming either of them outright. He is publicly taking swings at his ex-girlfriend on a track aimed at her current boyfriend on an album that contained 43 songs, supposedly designed to demonstrate his growth. And the fact that he still cannot stop talking about Rihanna across 3 full albums tells you everything you need to know about where his head is at. That's not someone who has processed a loss. That's someone being eaten alive by it. And on that same track, in what might be the most symbolically devastating detail of the entire triple album, he borrows Kodak Black's Cadence from No Flockin', a choice that matters for a reason I'll come back to in a minute. The Weeknd pulled away too, and this is a man Drake helped bring into the mainstream at a time when Abel Tesfaye was still uploading music to YouTube from a Toronto apartment, a man whose collaboration with Drake on Crew Love was a defining moment for both of their careers. Gone. Artists Drake spent years championing were now standing on the other side of the room with no apparent interest in coming back. Drake noticed all of it, and you can hear it across the triple album in a way that borders on obsessive documentation. On What Did I Miss? He rapped openly about the departures, asking, "How can some people I love hang around pussies who tried me?" and referencing the pop-out concert with the wounded precision of someone who has replayed the footage 1,000 times. On Fighting Irish, he wrote, "Last time I looked to my right, you was standing beside me," cataloging each betrayal across multiple tracks and multiple albums, as if the act of recording the grievance might somehow undo the loss. But across all 43 songs, he never once stops to ask the question that everybody watching from the outside has been screaming for 2 straight years, which is that if every single person in the room has left, at what point do you consider the possibility that the problem might be you? And here is where the story moves from embarrassing to genuinely humiliating, because it wasn't just friends who turned on Drake. His own label did too. After Kendrick won the beef, Drake didn't do what J. Cole did, and that comparison is worth sitting with because it reveals everything about the difference between self-awareness and self-destruction. Cole was dragged into the same conflict when Kendrick dismissed him on the same track that started the war, and for a brief moment it looked like Cole was going to ride alongside Drake into battle when he released a response called 7-Minute Drill. Then he stopped, listened to the track back, publicly retracted it, and apologized with a kind of composure that made the internet respect him more, not less. He said Kendrick won that round, and he moved on, and his reputation not only survived, but arguably got stronger because people respected the self-awareness it took to absorb a loss without letting it become his entire identity. Drake watched that happen, saw the exact template for how to exit a losing fight with your dignity intact, and chose the opposite route in every conceivable way. He filed a defamation lawsuit against Universal Music Group, his own record label, the company that distributes his music and profits from his catalog, claiming they had promoted Not Like Us while knowing it contained false accusations against him. His appeal is still pending as of right now, which means that while Kendrick was collecting Grammys and selling out arenas and performing at the Super Bowl, Drake was sitting in depositions trying to win in a courtroom what he could not win on a microphone. And UMG's response in court was so savage it deserves to be read slowly, because they wrote, "He lost a rap battle that he provoked and in which he willingly participated." Instead of accepting the loss like the unbothered rap artist he often claims to be, he has sued his own record label in a misguided attempt to salve his wounds. They then pointed out that Drake had signed a public petition just 3 years earlier, defending artistic expression in rap lyrics, and they quoted his own petition back at him, writing, "Drake was right then and is wrong now." The lawsuit was dismissed. His own label called him a sore loser in a legal document filed in federal court, and then they used his own words to prove he was being a hypocrite. Now, here is what Kendrick Lamar actually said about Drake across all those diss tracks. Not just, "I'm a better rapper," but the deeper argument underneath it. Kendrick's real thesis was that Drake is built entirely on proximity, that he attaches himself to whoever is winning, absorbs their energy, mirrors their style, and discards them the moment they stop being useful. In 2024, that sounded like a clever insult, but in 2026, look at what Drake did with his own hands. He covered up a tattoo of one of his so-called best friends because the man attended a concert, dissed his ex-girlfriend on a comeback album, aimed at her current partner, sued his own label for promoting a rap song, and watched them humiliate him in federal court using his own words. And on Burning Bridges, the track where Drake is supposed to be proving that he can stand on his own, that he doesn't need anyone, that the people who left him made the wrong choice, he borrows Kodak Black's entire cadence from No Flockin'. And here's what makes that so devastating. Kodak Black is one of the few people who actually stayed loyal to Drake through the entire Kendrick fallout, one of the last people still standing in his corner. So on the track where Drake is raging about betrayal and independence and proving to the world that he's his own man, he is literally wearing the voice of one of his last remaining allies to do it. He cannot even perform the act of standing alone without borrowing someone else's identity. That is not a creative choice. That is Kendrick Lamar's entire thesis about proximity playing out in real time, at the level of individual vocal performance, on the very album that was supposed to disprove it. Kendrick's accusation was not an insult, it was a diagnosis, and the triple album is the lab result because Drake still has 87 million monthly listeners and 120 billion career streams, but those numbers come from playlists and algorithmic recommendations. Passive listening from people who hear Drake songs because Spotify serves them between other tracks, not because they seek them out or build communities around them or post about them with any kind of enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Kendrick won 5 Grammys for Not Like Us, performed it at the Super Bowl in front of 133 million people, and sold out a world tour on the strength of cultural gravity rather than algorithmic inertia. One of them has the industry's respect, and the other has the industry's data, and data without respect is just a spreadsheet nobody reads. 43 songs across 3 albums, a tattoo covered up, friendships permanently erased, an ex-girlfriend publicly dissed on a record that was supposed to represent evolution, a lawsuit against his own label that ended in the most public humiliation of his career, and across all of it, not a single moment of self-reflection, not one line on any of the 43 tracks where Drake pauses long enough to consider the possibility that he might be the common denominator in every room that emptied around him. Drake didn't make a comeback record. He made a 43-song case study, proving Kendrick Lamar understood him better than he understands himself.
That's my opinion!